Hello, so welcome to another reading vlog. This week, I'm very excited about some of the things I'm going to be picking up. Firstly, I'm going to be reading Ancillary Justice, which is the first book in the Imperial Radich series. Do I have that right? Who knows? Oh, Sari thinks I'm talking to her. No, I'm not. Anyway, this is a book that I picked up in my very first series try a chapter video that I did quite a long time ago for series that I have on my shelves. I didn't actually have the original trilogy when I did that. I have, it's way on the top shelf. We're not going to get it. I have like a spin-off that kind of follows this main trilogy. But anyway, the summary is I picked this up and I read the first chapter and I really loved it. You're kind of following this person who was a spaceship or is a spaceship, but they used to kind of inhabit the bodies of multiple people, but now they're kind of just stuck in one body. And it seems like they're out for revenge. There's a lot of questions in the beginning, which is done in a way which I really like. Like sometimes a lot of questions is not good where you're just confused, but this is more like you can tell something cool's going on, and I'm looking forward to seeing it be revealed because our main character just clearly doesn't really understand humans properly. Like they're very confused about gender. They call everybody she, and it kind of becomes clear that that's probably not what's happening. And I've been wanting to pick this up for ages, so I'm super excited to get to it. As well, though, I realized I only have this physically. I cannot get my hands on the ebook without buying the ebook, and I'm trying to not spend any money at the moment, so I'm just going to have this physical copy. But at nighttime, I kind of like to read an ebook so that I can be reading without being too annoying to Jace because I don't need to have a light on. So then I had an idea, and I'm very proud of this idea. Gideon the Ninth. I've been trying to pick this series up for ages, and I wanted to try and at least read the first book before the end of the year, and I was like, how am I going to fit this in? I just don't really have time. But since I won't have an ebook to read at night anyway, and I have the ebook of Gideon the Ninth, it seems like the solution is obvious. And even if I don't get through this very quickly, also, another book I want to be reading in November is The Lost Medal. I only have that physically as well. And also, the last book of the month that I want to get to, The Sudden Appearance of Hope, I only have the physical copy of that as well. So even if this takes me all month to read, that actually would be perfect. So Gideon the Ninth, if you don't know, is about, everyone always just calls it a lesbian necromancers in space. But the idea is we have this woman named Gideon. I don't actually know if she's the one on the cover. Let's say she is. Gideon is stuck in this ninth house. It seems to be like a planet, and it's all the magic on this planet is based around necromancy, and she has always wanted to escape. However, she hasn't been able to. Then she makes a deal with the head of the house that if she'll go along and kind of act as security for this competition type thing, that she will gain her freedom. So I actually have previously read the first chapter, maybe the first couple of chapters, and then I just didn't have time to continue the series. But hopefully this time I'll read more than a couple of chapters, and hopefully I'll love it. I'm really hoping I'm going to love it after waiting so long to pick it up. As well, I always have to have an audiobook on the go, so I'm going to be picking up The Bright Sword by Lev Grossman. So I really liked The Magicians by Lev Grossman. That's not entirely true. I think I actually gave the first book in that trilogy 2 stars, then the next book I gave 3 stars, the next one I gave 4 stars, so it got better and better. Wouldn't it be great? Wouldn't it be perfect if The Bright Sword was 5 stars? Then it would be 2, 3, 4, 5 from Lev Grossman. I don't know if that's actually going to happen because I haven't seen the best reviews for The Bright Sword. But this is Lev Grossman's take on the Camelot story, although I think it's mostly going to be focusing on the Knights of the Round Table that aren't like Arthur and Lancelot and all of that. And I'm hoping, like The Magicians, will have kind of a bunch of toxic teenagers or young adults kind of figuring out their life at the same time as whatever magical hijinks are going on. I don't really know. I'm hoping maybe I'll go for a longish run tomorrow, so we'll get a decent amount into it. I guess we'll see. and I'm about to go to bed, which means I will maybe read a little bit of this before Jace comes to bed and a little bit of this after the lights go off. It's too windy again, isn't it? Hello. So I have just been for a run, or maybe I'll run a little bit more. I haven't decided yet. But I wanted to update you. So I've been listening to The Bright Sword. I think I'm about 10% of the way in, so not very far in yet. And basically we've been introduced to Colum, who is this knight who clearly is well out of his depth and has big dreams of going to Camelot and becoming a knight, but he's kind of arrived a little bit too late and everything is a disaster, and so it's really not going to be what he expected, but also like he's hiding a lot of things. He's not really up to the task. So it's very similar to I'm a little bit out of breath. It's very similar to The Magicians with Quentin, who's like kind of dreamed of being part of this magical world, and then when he finally achieves it, it's not really everything that he could have hoped for, and he also is somewhat out of his depth a lot of the time. Then we got to Camelot, and now it's telling us kind of the backstory of one of these other knights and how he also maybe isn't completely knightly. Anyway, it's a pretty good setup. I like how it's telling kind of a classic knight's tale. Oh, now it's so noisy in the background. Anyways, I'm now walking past a bunch of trucks, so... Oh, and it's super windy. Editing me is going to hate trying to fix the sound on this. But I do really like the beginning of it. It's a good setup with like a classic knight's tale, but being told in like a non-classic kind of way. So also, maybe I can come around here and it'll be less noisy and less windy. Also, last night... Oh, this bird is quite noisy though. Anyway, also, who's in there? Hello? I don't know about that bird though. Anyway, last night I also started Ancillary Justice, so I kind of reread that first chapter that I'd read previously, and then I also read the second chapter, and I didn't get to Gideon the Ninth because then I got very tired and fell asleep, and Jace came to bed quite late last night, so I wasn't trying to like read while the lights were off. Anyway, shush bro. The second chapter kind of went back in time to when the spaceship was like 20 people. The people that the spaceship inhabits, seriously, this bird. I'm like, let's stop where it's quiet, and then this bird is like singing right over the top of my head. The spaceship or the people that the spaceship inhabits, people that have been taken over, and I think it's like illegal to be done now in the future. But there's 20 people that the spaceship kind of has, and so it's quite interesting because the chapter is told from the perspective of someone who's in different places, so they're kind of having two conversations as once, or they're observing one conversation and telling you about that conversation, interspersed with another conversation that they're having, interspersed with like others of them observing things, and sometimes observing things around the other versions of them or the others of them. It's very strange, but I really like that kind of strange, you know? I will admit, there's definitely a lot about the world building that I feel like I'm struggling to understand. Like, I don't really understand the naming. I don't really understand, there's some weird politics going on with this big empire taking over. I don't understand all of that, and I'm not sure if I'm meant to be understanding it yet or not, but it doesn't really matter because I'm being kept interested enough with these like weird perspectives. Oh, also what I really love is this spaceship calls everybody she because they just can't be bothered with gender or don't understand gender. And I kind of love it because you never know the gender of any characters really. Like sometimes the spaceship will be like, oh yeah, I know this one. This one's a male. But still will continue to call them she even after having been like, oh yeah, definitely a male, this one. And I do really love that. Anyway, so I'm having a lot of fun with Ancillary Justice. I have realized the problem I'm going to have is that if I'm reading Gideon the Ninth at night, nighttime is usually my main reading time. So I'm going to have to come up with a plan. And maybe this is a good chance to try and make a habit to fit in reading time during the day and not always at night. So maybe when I get back from a run, I'll try and put some reading time aside. Maybe. Anyway, I guess we'll go back to running probably now.
lazy Sunday mornings, hiding under covers. I don't mind.
Hello, so I'm back in my little desk nook and I wanted to give you a reading update. So I did read a chapter last night of Gideon the Ninth, just a chapter though, which I have already read previously, and in fact I've read further than that previously, so I don't really have any new thoughts about it yet. Hopefully tonight maybe I'll get past where I've already gotten previously. I guess we'll see. But with this one, I have managed to get to page 100, which I guess is just over a quarter of the way through. And I'm really liking this. I will say it definitely doesn't like hold your hand. There's a lot going on and I probably don't understand it all, but we're kind of beginning to understand that 1,000 years ago, there was some kind of conflict between this big empire that's been taking over and one of the groups or planets that it had taken over has done something to fight back. And now, 1,000 years later, this ship, who now only has one body, previously had lots, now only has one, is kind of trying to get revenge, it seems like, on whatever happened back then, but we're still kind of learning what happened back then, so it's interesting to see the links between the two. There's also still a lot of really interesting gender stuff, like where the ship will just consistently call everyone she, but then other characters will start calling certain characters he, and you have to just keep like thinking, wait, is that person a man or a woman? But also, like, does it matter? Because it clearly doesn't matter to our main character. And also just like that perspective of them being so many different people or having so many different bodies is really interesting. But also, because they've lived like 2,000 years, their perspective of time is a little bit different as well, I feel like, because they've kind of got this memory of things that happened so long ago. So this is definitely like a book that's making me think, and I'm enjoying thinking. And I've actually put some tabs in this even. It's been a long time since I've owned a book and been able to put tabs in it and like wanted to put tabs in it, mostly because I've been reading so many library books. And I did a few times put tabs in library books, but then you kind of have to take them all out and it's a bit annoying, which is definitely the benefit of owning books you really like, because you can keep all the tabs and you can go back and open them up and just look at the lines you like. Anyway, the summary is a quarter of the way into this. I'm really loving it, and hopefully I can make some more progress later today. Some parts of this book are so intense, it's kind of blowing my mind. Like, there's been a few times in this book where I've started thinking, it's getting a little bit boring, and then every time that happens, something happens that's very exciting. It's kind of like big bits of drama, like interspersed with like cultural exploration, as well as just like a methodical approach to like this revenge that they're trying to get. It's kind of weird because a lot of this is written very unemotionally, like very factual, but you do still kind of get a sense of this like anger behind all of that that's actually driving this spaceship person. I'm definitely getting the feeling now that I think before I was saying they were 20 people, but I think the spaceship actually has like more people than that, but kind of different groups of the people that they inhabit are called different things. I'm still not really clear on that. All I know is they definitely used to be more people than they are now. But yeah, so I'm halfway through now. Something just happened that was very intense, is the best way I can say it without spoiling it, but also is going to have big ramifications on the rest of the book. So I'm looking forward to continuing this. Something that I'm not looking forward to continuing though is The Bright Sword. Where's my phone? I guess I'm like a third of the way through now, and I'm kind of thinking about DNFing it. I'm thinking back to the start of the year when I was very hard out with DNFing things. Like, as soon as I thought I'm not going to love this book, I would DNF it. And I've kind of gotten out of the habit of doing that throughout the year. But like, I can tell The Bright Sword's not going to be a favorite of mine. It's very frustrating because I was really looking forward to it. But it's kind of like everything about the Arthur and Camelot stories. Like, the great things about it is like the love and betrayal, and then this like cool magical stuff like the Sword and the Stone and some of the stuff with Merlin, and none of that is in The Bright Sword. And I can see that it's kind of trying to, I guess, look at like a more realistic version of what might really have happened. And probably the characters are very realistic. And honestly, I like every time it starts a new kind of bit, I'm a bit bored, and then it does build up into something that I am interested in. And then every time I get interested, it pulls back to something new that I don't care about. And I don't know. I mean, the highest I'm going to give this book at this point is 2.5 stars. I can't see myself giving it any higher than that unless like it completely turns around, which admittedly Lev Grossman could do. He's done it with the Magician's books before, for me at least. And I can see lots of people giving this like 5-star reviews and loving it. But I can also see lots of people saying pretty much what I'm saying, which is that it's really boring. I do think, like, I want to compare it to the First Law World, but it feels like a bad comparison because I love the First Law World. But sometimes, especially in the later books, I did find the First Law books a little bit boring, and I feel like it's a similar kind of boring and that the characters feel very similar in tone. But it's not quite as funny as Joe Abercrombie, and there aren't as many like really good lines. There's a few, but not enough. I don't know. I'm trying to decide, should I just DNF it and move on with other books? Like there's 3 other audiobooks that I really would rather be reading right now, so should I just move on to one of those? Or should I give it a little bit more of a chance? How much would I have to listen to it to get halfway? Let's do some maths. 23 divided by 2 is 11.5, and I'm at 7.5, so I'd have to read 4 more hours, which is 2 more hours of my actual listening time. So basically a whole nother run. Maybe I could give it 1 more run. So I'll probably go for a run tomorrow. So if it doesn't pull me back in by then I think we will DNF it. And I'll try really hard on my run, I think, to pay attention to it. Have I been reading anything else? Oh, the other thing I'm meant to have been reading is Gideon the Ninth, but just been falling asleep instead, so I haven't. But maybe tonight, maybe. Hello. So I've been going back and forth my whole run about whether I should DNF the Bright Sword. Like most of the time I get bored, but every time I think, yeah, definitely let's end it, then something interesting happens and I think, oh no, maybe I'll continue, maybe the ending will be epic. But once again I find myself bored just as I get to somewhat quiet spot to update you guys. So we're gonna call it, I'm gonna DNF it. Maybe if someone wants to come along and tell me that they have read it and that they love it, maybe I would pick it up again. I'm kind of annoyed because I used an Audible credit for this, and so the fact that I don't like it is quite disappointing. Let's wait for this person to drive away. So I think next what I'm going to do for the rest of my way home is read, I always forget the name, Not Till We Are Lost, I think, which is the latest Bobiverse book, which is this book about this guy who was frozen and then wakes up and he's been put in the like brain of a spaceship and he can like duplicate himself. So then there's like multiple Bobs going across the universe having adventures. Oh, it's getting quite windy. Outside vlogging is always an adventure. Anyway, I don't really know what this latest Bobiverse book is going to be about, but I'm excited to read it because there's often like a lot of problem solving and things about AI and just exploring the world, or exploring the universe. So I'm excited to read it. Anything else? I have been continuing Ancillary Justice, but maybe I'll talk to you about that when we're out of the wind, out of the outside, because I didn't get that far. And also, I did actually read a little bit more of Gideon the Ninth last night, and I'm still not past where I initially got to the first time I read some of that, which just makes it so ridiculous that I read so much. And like, I'm not that far in, but still, I had read a decent amount last time, and then I never continued it. How annoying. Hello, so I am home and I listened to a bit of Not Till We Are Lost. Is that the name? I keep forgetting it. Anyway, what I kind of want to acknowledge with it is that I could see a lot of people thinking that it's boring, which I think is kind of ironic considering that I was just describing the bright sword as boring, but I think it definitely comes down to your preferences. Like, I know, I've seen the reviews, a lot of people are loving the bright sword, and I think it's just that some people really like that gritty, realistic view of like the Camelot story, whereas I still want some of the Camelot story or more of the betrayal and the magic of the Camelot story, and I'm not getting it from the bright sword. But when we look at Not Till We Are Lost, so it's a lot of just like scientific thinking and jargon and problem solving, and it's kind of, again, just like old men mucking around, but in the bright sword they're mucking around with quests and sword fights and knight stuff, and I guess kind of they're focused on their reputation and what other people think of them. I don't know what I'm saying. Anyway, the focus of the bright sword, not for me. The focus of Not Till We're Lost, of like science and ideas, definitely much more for me. Even though I admit a lot of the science is going over my head, like I don't necessarily understand all of it, but I also don't really feel like I need to understand all of it to enjoy it. I am definitely making an effort to take note of which Bob each chapter is from. With the audiobooks especially, it's really easy to just go from one chapter to another and not pay attention to that, and then you end up getting confused. Like, this is my experience from the previous audiobooks, is I end up getting confused about which Bobs are which, because even though they have slightly different personalities, they're also at their core the same person. So it does get very confusing, even though it makes sense for them to be very similar. But at the start of the audiobook chapters, it does say the name of the Bob that you're with. So I need to remember to always pay attention to that. I'm also really liking, at this point in the series, we've got quite a lot of different factions of Bobs. So the idea is that every time he replicates himself, there's a little bit of drift. And so like if replicant of him makes another replicant, then they can be even further from the original Bob in terms of their personality. And so they're now, because it's been so long, so many generations of Bobs, some of the Bobs are very different and they've kind of formed different factions, and it's really interesting seeing the different Bobs interact with each other, because like I said, they kind of are the same person, but they also have some very like fundamentally different ideas, which is kind of the core focus, I think, of this book, although it's definitely also going to be about AI. A couple of the Bobs are off exploring a wormhole that they've come across. Like, I don't really know what the focus of this book is going to be, and sometimes there isn't really a focus. They're all off doing different things, and I could definitely see some people would find it boring, but I just find it quite comforting in a way. Also, it's much shorter than the bright sword, like half the length, so even if I did find it boring, it would be easier to get through. The other thing, I am today going to try and finish off Ancillary Justice because I have some reading time now, maybe. And I think all I want to say about what I've read recently is it's continuing to be very intense. I'm still not necessarily understanding everything about the culture, but I think that's intentional. And there is also a lot in here, kind of this ship, or this person, this segment of the ship, reflecting about like identity and whether their segments kind of are their own person or whether they are part of the whole. And I quite enjoy some of those ideas about identity and like what makes us who we are. And I really am loving this so much. So I'm excited to see how the book is going to end, because I think it should be a fairly satisfying ending, because I saw something at the end here. There's a little bit of a interview, I think, with the author. Like, I don't know if you can see, but the last bit, the pages are a different color, and it was saying something about this trilogy just being like a loose collection of stories, which hopefully means that the ending of this will be more of a set conclusion, and then the next books will be just like tied in stories rather than having to wait for the next books to get a conclusion to the story. That's my assumption. I guess we'll see. So I just finished Ancillary Justice and I really enjoyed this. I will admit, sometimes the action at the end, I found a few bits hard to follow, but I actually think that's more likely a me problem rather than a book problem. And I also wonder if I would understand this a lot more on a reread. I kind of would like to find out, but sometime in the future, because I almost feel like my brain needs a bit of a rest after this. I was actually thinking of going directly into Ancillary Sword. I even put my bookmark in, see? I was thinking of going straight into this, but now that I have finished this, I'm thinking, that's too much for me right now, even though I do want to read this. But I also read the synopsis of this, and I kind of can't see this being as epic as this, although maybe it will be. I don't know, but I'd rather take a break now, I've decided. So this one, what I really loved about it is it did that thing where it builds such a strong foundation that at the end, it's like saying things that in any other situation wouldn't make any sense, like sentences that are so bizarre, but because it's built on top of everything that's been set up, it does make sense. And I really love it when books can do that, like kind of build a reality that is so different from actual reality. And as I expected, the ending was very epic, but also very satisfying. So I feel like this is a good place to take a little break from this series. But also I feel really good about this. Like, this was a 5-star prediction for me and it came through, which is nice since The Bright Sword was not what I was hoping. I haven't listened to any more of my audiobook, obviously. I've just been reading this since I last talked to you. So I'll be continuing Not Till We Are Lost in my next reading vlog. I'll also be continuing Gideon the Ninth in my next reading vlog. So it's saying here that I'm 15% of the way through. I did read a tiny bit of this, and I have finally gotten past where I got previously. So they've now arrived on this other planet where there's going to be some kind of competition between the houses. We don't really know what the deal is with that competition, but I guess I will also find that out next week. So I think actually the only thing that I finished this week was Ancillary Justice, which is fine because I loved it. I probably could have finished The Bright Sword. Could I? I'm not actually sure if I could have, but I do feel relieved about having DNF'd it, and I probably need to get back into the habit of DNFing things, although I got lots of 5-star predictions on my upcoming TBRs, so hopefully we won't be needing to do any DNFing. So if you are wondering, next week I've decided I'm going to start, I say next week, it's actually already Tuesday, so it's this week. Anyway, I'm going to try and read the first half of The Lost Medal in my next reading vlog, along with Gideon the Ninth, along with Not Till We Are Lost. So come and check in with me there if you would like to. And of course, if you've read any of the books that I talked about in this video, I would love to chat with you about them down in the comments. Do subscribe if you'd like to see more of my bookish videos. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching. I hope that you are doing well, and I will see you next time.